This video is really hard to make, and I'll tell you why it's hard to make, and I'm going to do my best as a disclaimer before we start. On my pre-planning I had tons of little bits of paper or card here. The centerpiece that you see here is all about attributes, and if you add up these vertical little cards and points I wanted to make, it becomes about 9 separate videos. So let's call this as quite a relaxed overview, where we're talking about Chapter 8, Number 1, Attributes, Overview, All. And the part I'm trying to get across, even with my own head here, is about how one person can work as a team, yet think about each separate component successfully. So in previous videos I've talked about the whole 11 attributes that I've got here. And one tip here in red I want to say straight away is if you hit this button here, which is keyframe all attributes, I would say think twice about hitting keyframe all, because it can get you into trouble on your timeline quite quickly. So in a moment or two I'm going to be talking about the demo area and also adding attributes. But the part here, going to work as a team, think as a component, is really a good example in my mind. It helps me to come to terms with it. The way, say, Ingrid Michelson is live at the Audio Grotto here with Ali Moss and Bess Rogers, and they work as a team. Of course they do. If you are in Airborne, in a bomber, the Avro Lancaster, you've got 7 people on board who are working as a team to do their individual jobs. And I guess really what I'm getting at is that if we look at this slide here where I've thought about the Grand Canyon Skywalk and did make 2 or 3 videos about it, this almost was my pre-screenshot storyboard to look at the way I wanted to have this idea that we could come up almost like flying like an eagle below the skywalk and then kind of drop down again, and this was followed through in this particular timeline with all of these attributes, all these little white dots all over my Earth Studio timeline. Remember, if we're talking about, you know, the musical analogy, then what I've covered this across is the musical score, where a musician or sets of musicians will come along here and look exactly of how the notes work, how the lyrics work, how the whole thing gets put together. So with that in mind, let's go over to the demo area and try and get through a few of these, and I think I want to be as succinct as I can. So taking one example, I've used Warwick Castle in England here, and all I've done is just set up literally a point, and I want to start talking about how one attribute works, and the attribute I'm going to choose is tilt, which at the moment is 82, and the same will be appropriate for altitude, longitude, latitude, panning and tilting, time of day, pretty much anything, camera targets. So let's look at this. So at the moment I'm going to say, how can I work and control one attribute only? So right now I've got an 82-degree tilt looking at the castle. Now if you think that I am below, literally, so if I dial in, and this is how we can control them, we can literally, as I've talked about before, left mouse button and drag up and down. I could click once and add, and I'm going to put 0 in there to say that we are in a point of the ground, literally above this field, above Warwick, England. So if I pull the timeline off and pull it back again, you can see that because I've actually changed it immediately, and now I think it was 82, wasn't it, to put in there, that's where we are. So if I wanted to say look at one attribute and one only and move it along for a little bit there, and all I want to do at this precise moment is go up in the air 200 meters and hit enter. You'll notice that the longitude and latitude and the altitude is immediately changed. So what we've done is we've say, okay, so we go up in the air, which is quite lovely, but what I want to do is I've lost the castle. So at this precise moment what we can do, and this is what you can actually start moving this around in the viewport above, and that's, I think, a lot of I would say beginners do it, because it's like really useful and nice and easy, but you can get lost. For me, dealing with this for about 8 weeks or so, you see immediately I've messed up my timeline, because what I've done is I've dragged it around a bit, and for some reason I've lost where I want to be. So let me just show you a different way without getting too involved with it. So at the moment you can see I'm way off. Or am I back? Oh no, I'm back. So this time what I want to do is I want to go along a little way, and I want to increase this, let's just say 150 meters. Notice that I'm dialing in and clicking 150, and there we are. But you see I've just slightly lost this. So what I can do this time is come along and drop down the pan to about, let's keep it about there on the castle, which is now 72, and you'll notice that this keyframe attribute has worked itself just on the tilt. And so now we can come along and we can say, okay, that's where we were. I've increased in altitude, I'm increasing in altitude, and it just looks like there's a kind of a tilt. But in actual fact, you'll notice, if you look, that altitude is 100 and tilt is 82. And then we go off, and any time after that keyframe, 150 and tilt of 82. What can happen is, and I've done previously, is to move something and then click keyframe all, and depending on where you are on the timeline, it can throw everything else out. So I think what I'm actually going to do there is I'm going to say stop, really, to say that if you can control these, you can, if you like, double click and change the altitude, let's say to 200, and hit enter. And what you'll notice is, let's see what's happened, 100 increases up this time to 200. So I've noticed I've just changed altitude, but you'll find that the tilt is now off. Now at the moment what I was doing is I could go in there and just dial in, just drag in to say, let's say about there, and snap and just release it, and it's 66.2. And I'm starting to control something, I think, a little bit. And I'm getting into the meta areas of some kind of cinematic thing for a castle. Okay, look, if I wanted to add the attributes, to say this was an introduction, I've never done a camera target. I could do a field of view, time of day. I can add these things and keyframe them, but quite honestly, my tip to end this really is to say, if you possibly can, go away and get yourself a why is that not coming in? Yeah, there we go. Get yourself some kind of visual or noted, even in your mind, a storyboard, and then the attributes may follow as you have a flow of ideas. Otherwise, in my opinion, is that you're going to sit in a timeline, and you're going to click on these attributes, and before you know it, you could spend 10-15 minutes or even 2 minutes and realize it's all gone horribly wrong, and you'd have to start again. So my tip there is think twice about keyframing all. I wish I could have done better on this video, but it's a really complicated task. Look, gone on too long. I think I'm going to do more in the attribute series, but at the moment I hope you got something out, some tips there, but not an easy one to make.